show of our 2015-16 season. It is our 10th original work that we have created in 14 years. So we're very proud that you are part of the first group of people to see our newest original work. It is a unique work for us. We have spent the last 14 years creating original work. We've created original work about Kentucky. We've created original work about our own personal stories. We've created original work about the stories of our friends and our families. This is the first time we have created a work about the community in which we live. And so this is a very special production for us. We are so grateful to the many, many people and organizations and businesses who gave of their time to tell their stories so that we could translate them into a theatrical storytelling, which you will see this evening. We have had many supporters and funders along the way, and we're very grateful for them, and you'll see that information in our program. So, with that said, just a few more pieces of housekeeping. Not only is tonight our community night, Lilith is committed to economic access, so one performance of our shows is always at a price that is much closer to a movie ticket than it is to a theater ticket, so we're delighted that so many of you took advantage of that tonight. And tonight we are also holding a talk back after the show, and we'll be speaking with people who represent community organizations that are in the trenches every day dealing with the issues that we're exploring in this play. So we do invite you to stay afterwards for about 20 or 30 minutes to have a little bit more of a conversation. If you do have to leave, we won't hold you hostage. We'll give you the opportunity to leave. There is a 15-minute intermission in the show, so please don't leave the first time that the lights come up. Do stay for Act 2. And then if you have to leave afterwards, that's fine. If you can stay, we certainly welcome you to do so. In our program, you will see a number of different advertisements from area businesses and organizations. If you use any of their products, you go to their stores, please let them know that you saw their name in our program so that they know that their arts dollars are being spent wisely. This is a very crowded community of theater. Nine productions opened this week. 9 productions. So Lilith and all of the other fine theater companies in this community work in a very crowded field. So we know that individuals and businesses' dollars are stretched, so please do let folks know that you saw their name here. Which is also a perfect segue into the fact that one of the ways that Looking for Lilith raises money is through an online giving platform called Power to Give, which is operated by the Fund for the Arts, and it's one of the ways that they are able to support organizations which are not part of the Fund for the Arts. And during the period between now and Saturday when our show closes, we're raising money on Power to Give. You'll find all the information in here. And during this period, every dollar that you donate will be matched by 50% by one of the fine corporate philanthropists in this community. So if you enjoy the show, if you're appreciative of the social justice slant that Lilith takes with our productions, we would certainly be very grateful for any contribution that you might wish to make. Exit signs in case of emergency to your right and also the way you came in. If you have not already discovered the restrooms, the ladies' room is straight ahead here and the gentlemen's is to the right. The Louisville Orchestra has been next door all day auditioning tuba players, which are wonderful. Every orchestra needs a few. We are told that the auditions have ended around now. If you do hear a tuba, it's not us. Erin is incredibly talented, and she doesn't have a tuba there. But seriously, we do hope that there won't be any conflict of sound effects as we get started here. Lastly, but not leastly, please, if you have not already turned off your cell phone, please do so. This is a very small house, so if you're inclined to text, your light will shine brightly not only on you Once again, thank you for joining us. Please enjoy the show.
There was once a town in the heart of America where all things seemed to live in harmony with its surroundings. The town lay in the midst of fields of grain and hillsides of orchards where, in spring, white clouds of bloom drifted above green fields. In autumn, oak and maple and birch set up a blaze of color that flamed and flickered across a backdrop of pines. There was an abundance and variety of bird life. People came to fish the rivers and the streams that flowed into it.
When I was a child, I used to watch white clouds and see all the shapes of my imagination against a blue sky.
I would wander the woods, looking at the trees, the green and the wood, the bark and the undergrowth.
Listening to the sounds of the forest.
So peaceful. Such a sound of home for me.
So peaceful.
Sound of outdoors.
Sound of home for me.
When I was a child, I adored playing in the dirt.
Digging in the sandbox.
Swinging on the swing.
Investigating earthworms.
Chasing baby bunny rabbits.
Feeling the grass between our toes.
Packing mud pies tight. Mud underneath my fingernails. Sometimes mud between our toes.
Playing in the rain.
You know that warm Kentucky summer rain. Sometimes mud between our toes. Sometimes mud between our toes.
When I was a child, there was a creek by our house. A spring.
It was very shallow.
Mossy and delicate.
There were these little black things, little fish and tadpoles and frogs I loved to catch.
Fairies with glowing wings flickered against the night sky.
I was their queen.
In the water, I found a connection.
Wildflowers.
Delighted the traveler's eye.
Never pick.
Just look.
Just appreciate.
Peace, calm, joy.
Release.
Peace, calm, joy.
Release.
Peace, calm, joy.
Release.
When I was a child, I found a connection.
Then a strange blight seemed to creep over the area, and everything began to change. Some evil spell had settled upon the community.
I was told not to play outdoors. It wasn't safe.
I noticed that the creek was brown and frothy after storms.
As I grew up, things were built up around me.
The animals slowly started to disappear.
Deserted by all living things. I wondered if fairies actually exist.
The sky grew darker, grayer, heavier.
When I was surrounded by concrete and noise, I only saw the birds flying high overhead to somewhere else.
The very air I loved became poison to me.
The air in my neighborhood,
Water,
land, and air were being contaminated.
used up by us with little regard for the future.
Everywhere was a shadow of death.
When I was older, patches of sensitive skin formed where I had been badly sunburned.
I used hand sanitizer and wondered why we weren't scared.
The clear gel that would wash it all away.
The people had done it themselves.
When I was older, the clouds
Also came from smokestacks.
In the town, the doctors were puzzled by new kinds of sickness that began to appear among their patients. There were several sudden and unexplained deaths, not only among adults, but even among children. There was strange stillness. The birds, for example,
My great aunt and uncle lived in Chickasaw. They were within walking distance of the chemical plants. They had this big, huge tree in it that covered the house. It was surrounded by a brick border that they built. I mean, I was from vegetarian, so I was like, wow, check this out.
Fancy tree!
Oh, let me tell you something. When I was with my former coworkers at lunchtime, we would go and pile in the car and we would go and see each other's new houses. Well, one time I brought someone with me to this neighborhood to see my house, and I brought her a certain route just because I knew kind of the type of person she was. So we were driving down, I think it was Southwestern Parkway from the other side, and there was the new sports complex, and there was lots of green, nice houses, and like a million people out there watching their kids play baseball, and she was just like, wow, this is nice. And I was like, what did you expect it to be? But I mean, that goes to show you how media can shape the way that we think about people, about where they live.
I'm the oldest of six. When I was born, we lived over on Stoll Avenue in a little shotgun house. And by the time we had just had the fourth kid in this little bitty house, I think there was only one room for the kids. I don't remember that well. But we moved then to Lower Brownsboro Road. Our house backed up to the orphanage. So we were between Crescent Hill and Birchwood. And we stayed there for 4 years. And by then we had 6 kids. So we moved out to off of Rudy Lane. And it was by then, if not sooner, that my parents decided we would always have woods and greenery or something, wherever we lived. And we stayed there only, I think, a year and a half, because then my mother's father decided he was going to retire. He was going to sell the family business, so he sold it to my dad. And we needed the capital from the house to help do that, so we moved from that house into a much cheaper house opposite the Crescent Hill golf course on a little side street called Belvar. And we stayed there for probably 3 years, because then my dad had, paid off enough money and made enough money that we were able to build a new house again with the creek and the woods literally in the backyard. That was out about, it was Goose Creek, just beyond and down there off 22. And then I lived there for 5 years before I just moved out and was on my own. Where I grew up is kind of, Clifton, Crescent Hill, St. Matthews, Goose Creek. So, what is home? Well, it varied, but it's essentially East End.
My entire life, from the age of 6, has been in this area. What is home? West of 9th Street. My life has been consumed in this area. My schooling, of course, Shawnee High School and Virginia Avenue and Duval Junior High School. So I love this area. I know this area. There's a community feel. There's a family feel.
Everybody that you see is connected.
Or know someone else from the area, because this was the start of Louisville. So there's a pride there, but there's also the negative side is how all of this is starting to dissipate. The food desert and the lack of businesses. Things that we should have, and we always have to go to a different area, but the main thing I want to mention on the negative side, and I know that we need chemical plants. We need production. We need the things that go on in the Rubbertown area, but they're hurtful.
Shawnee Park. You'll see straight ahead the green earthen berm. That's the flood wall that was built in the 40s. Turning down Southwestern Parkway, you'll see all the beautiful trees. We're going to go into Chickasaw Park. Now we're right next to the Marathon Petroleum Terminal. There's a bike loop here. You'll see it throughout our trip. It's part of the Louisville Loop. Turning down Bell's Lane, you'll see a lot of chemical companies. There's Lubrizol and Carbide, and there's the Patty's Run power plant with the Homeland Security warning. And there's the American Synthetic Rubber Company. This is the entrance to Lake Dreamland, once a dairy farm in the 1930s, owned by Ed Hartlich. He converted it to a resort area for city dwellers. Now we're going into Riverside Gardens. This is Momentive up here on the right. Stouffer Chemical was here before them. And this here is Lee's Lane, which will lead us to the 110-acre landfill site. Now on to our last stop, you'll see the LG&E Cane Run generating station directly to your right. Cranes and all the coal cars from western Kentucky. And there's the natural gas plant. Turning into Pauper Cemetery, you'll see LG&E directly to your right. And as you can see, it goes on and on and on.
Found fancy tree on field trip. Wow, trees are beautiful. I love trees. I love nature. The earth is a treasure. Fancy tree gave us treasures. Cold pricklies they are. One for each of us. A cold prickly to remember her by. Oh, I love you, fancy tree. You are beautiful. Live long and live well. Let your beauty be seen by all who enter here. Chickasaw Park. Chickasaw Park. Lucky duck. Lucky to have Fancy Tree here. Will you give Fancy Tree what it needs to share its beauty? I love you, Fancy Tree. I love you, Chickasaw Park. Beauty.
Glares from behind tinted windows as bass vibrates in my ears. Feeling like walking where once I was not allowed. I can't bring myself to join the others. Each letter signifies a name, a story, a voice. This is where you go when you are the poor, the forgotten.
Coming upon the perimeter of a house. Someone grew up here. No, this was someone's home. The foundation is washed out, at least on this side. Someone grew up here. You don't have to be an archaeologist to see it, to see the hand of man. The back wall is still visible, nature growing up all around it. I wonder who lived here. How did they live? What happened to them? Did they leave because of this toxic landfill right beside them? And when did the barriers come up on the road? Skeletal poison sumac surrounding what's left of the structure, reaching out to those who enter this decaying resting place of a home. No. A house. No. Bricks. That have been left behind
trespassing sign. And on the other side, a path for biking and walking. All on top of generations of our generation's waste, because this isn't a city park. It's a landfill. And suddenly everything seems ominous. The rain puddle in the old gravel road could be a toxic soup. And all of the suspicious eyes peering out at me from windows and yards. The facade of living outdoors, but not a soul outside on this warm spring night.
Coal ash pouring from the conveyor belt, adding to the 14-story mass, all cloaked behind a thin screen to keep the fugitive dust at bay. And all the while the forgotten souls of River Valley call this home, their final resting place. A rusty wind chime sings a lonely tune as broken crosses and deteriorating headstones lay forever in peace, resting by the river at the foot of Coal Ash Mountain.
Just beyond, rows and rows of tombstones are nestled here. Lives silently sit, resting among the trees and factories, looking just beyond. Just beyond life is death. The between is what we struggle to make sense of. Doing things like burying the dead seem normal and right. Putting flowers, real or fake, to represent the love of a pile of bones resting below. The massive spring to catch renegade dust looms above us. I wonder if it traps the souls too. Just beyond the silo pumps a glorious white puff, almost like a cloud, but one that creates fear, not fills the sky on a beautiful spring day. Instead, it lingers just beyond.
Everybody misunderstands the toxic problems in this community, and I will have to disabuse you of your misunderstanding, because we can't solve the problem effectively if we haven't defined it correctly. You're not going to have the same visceral feeling that I had about clean air. I started first grade in 1970, when state of the art for industry was put it all out there. The pollution was visible. People have asked me many times, what do you think our worst problem is here in Louisville? Is it climate change? Is it air pollution? Is it Rubbertown, air toxins? And I say yes. You can't separate them. You know, it's all three. We tend to define the problem as Rubbertown industry and ignore that cars are a very big source of the problem. And cars are more plentiful elsewhere. And we have pollution in the East End that we don't talk about, and we're not going to do anything about, as long as we think the problem is just over there. And if you think we have this problem in the West End because of racism, are you giving racist people permission to not give a shit? To not see this as their problem too? This is a community-wide problem. And oh, by the way, the prevailing direction of wind is from the southwest to the northeast. Still, in 1970, the Clean Air Act came out. So the difference between 1970 air and 1990 air is huge. Visibly huge. But the problem still exists. But our air is actually cleaner now than it has ever been. And there's a public perception that our air is dirtier now than ever. Why do you think that is?
Extra, extra, read all about it. Extra, extra, read all about it.
No end in sight for a clash between residents, Rubbertown industry. January 25th, 2000.
relocate a community like that, you tear apart the social fabric of the community because they live together, they take care of each other's children. All of their social networks are in that community. And when you get a relocation program, frequently they're not relocated to the same area.
Instead, an advocate from the Kentucky Resource Council says,
Society needs to change the way that we think about pollution and stop tolerating companies that expose people to potentially hazardous chemicals. Ultimately, the solution that we need to be moving toward is this substitution of less toxic chemicals and ultimately toward waste reduction.
Now, when that radio series on Rubbertown came out and no one even spoke to me about the Strategic Toxic Air Reduction Program or the West Jefferson County Community Task Force, and instead they interviewed React and that out-of-town consultant, I was, well, let's say, taken aback. Where's the rest of the damn story? I'm glad it was a rerun, so I could not call in. I think God didn't want me to call in. It would not have been good. There were some facts missing from that series, such as the history of the task force and all the work that the residents and U of L and industry had done together working on this problem. Credit needs to be given where credit is due for the groundwork that was laid to catapult STAR, the Strategic Toxic Air Reduction Program. It was too sensationalist, too focused on the problems, and not enough on all of the solutions that have been applied. So, I sent the journalist a little history lesson. A 6-page history lesson. I tried to shorten it, I swear. But when that environmental consultant from Louisiana came to talk to us in 2004, she said,
Okay, we need to start by organizing a group to work on this project, and I will show you how to do this.
we already have a system with U of L and worked in collaboration with the state EPA and environmental groups. It was as if she didn't hear me. That is not what she expected. Her goal was to show us how to do what we had already done. And quite successfully, I might add.
We need to get this group together to educate the public about what's happening, get people fired up, and get those chemical companies shut down.
Shut them down. It may be great for the environment, but the economy that we are all a part of would be devastated. And the things these companies make are by our demand. Things we want and depend on. More from the plastics, the rubber, the resins that go into what we enjoy and need.
What we do at the different Rubbertown plants, everybody receives the benefit, but they have no idea that they're actually getting it every hour of every day.
5 a.m. my alarm goes off.
Good morning. Please enjoy the engineered polymer that's part of this electronic application.
What?
Without the polymers engineered at Lubrizol, this alarm clock wouldn't have gone off.
7 a.m. kids off to the bus and it's the 4th cup of coffee. No Keurig in this household, not even a Mr. Coffee with paper filters. I use a French press to minimize the waste.
Your coffee, made with the help of acetylene.
What?
With water boiled on your metal stovetop, which was welded together with acetylene, manufactured in carbide industries.
9 a.m. into the car.
Brought to you by American.
This is an obvious one. American synthetic rubber, right? Tires, hoses, bumper, all in my car. Moving through the city, that beautiful steel skyline that stays upright because of all the calcium carbide in the steel that keeps it strong and flexible at the same time. Your computer, ma'am, and your phone, and your tablet.
11 a.m. and I'm deep into the magic of the interwebs. All the tiny components in each of these devices, born of the polymers, the rubber, the acetylene, from those factories in the West End, all those inconvenient things being created to make my world so convenient. 1 p.m.
You should eat something. An apple, maybe.
Okay, I get what's going on here, but an apple? What the hell does that have to do with industry?
Nourished by the agricultural lime known as calcium hydroxide, manufactured at Carbide Industries.
3 p.m.
Enjoy this chair.
Have a pencil, stand on the vinyl floor and look at the paint on the wall.
5 p.m.
Drive your car, stop at the store. Use a grocery cart, put your produce in a plastic bag.
6 p.m.
Take your food out of your frosty refrigerator, put it in your gas stove, use a non-stick pan, listen to a CD.
7 p.m.
Brush your teeth. Assembly.
Wait. It's in my toothpaste. Girl, it's in everything. 8 p.m.
TV, electric cords, circuit boards.
9 p.m.
Check your face wash before bed.
Everybody has interactions with things that are welded out of acetylene. Everybody encounters steel that is strengthened by the addition of the calcium carbide. Everybody eats food off of farms whose fields are nourished and neutralized by the calcium hydroxide. But they don't know any of it. It's so far behind the scenes and upstream of the consumer. They might know that the plants are there, but they might not appreciate why they're there. So give up our modern lifestyle. Give up all your fossil fuels, all your plastics, all your petroleum products, and go back to living in log cabins and making everything we need out of scraps of cotton and lamb's wool. And that's it.
Now, back in the 80s, there was this investigative reporter at WHAS. She was very instrumental in tracking and monitoring the air quality and doing it at different times of the day and going up in a helicopter. And she was really hard on D.F. Goodrich, where my husband worked. I'll just go ahead and say it. She was like a Robin Hood to us. You could hear the helicopter overhead and you would think, okay, that reporter's on it. She's up there watching out for us. What my job at D.F. Goodrich was chemical helper. The big bags, we had to get down in there and clean them out. Scrape out all the rubber and everything, all the residue from the polyvinyl chloride. All of a sudden, there's this rumor going on around the plant about this cancer, and some workers had died. So one morning, they ordered me to go to St. Agnes Hospital, where they did some blood work. Next thing I know, they're saying we're going to have to do a liver biopsy. After the biopsy, they ordered me to come home, and I stayed at home for almost a year. Full pay, benefits, etc. When he was staying at home, he had this box attached to him by his liver. You know, nowadays, everything is so small, but this was a big old box with leads coming from it. And the kids used to make fun of him, say he was the bionic man. And I tell you, that really worked on his spirit. He's wearing this box. They can't tell him what's wrong. This reporter's going overhead with this helicopter. All this kept it ever present on his mind. Depressed, worried. My biggest fear was a company as big as B.F. Goodrich is going to send me home. And I stay at home. And they're going to pay me full salary?
Something got to be wrong.
Yeah, he would say that over and over again.
That weighed on my mind more than anything. They diagnosed angiosarcoma with other workers, not with me. People were scared. Folk were getting sick. They didn't know what was going on.
I think they knew more than they were willing to admit.
That's when they come up with this stuff, that whatever was going on with my liver was something I caught from some tree in Arkansas.
We have never been to Arkansas.
They said it was not a polyvinyl chloride issue, but some tree in Arkansas that gave me this disease.
Let me ask you, any of the guys you were working with, do you know?
They all died. Al is still alive.
Yeah, he's got a lot of health issues.
The thing that bothered me was after that reporter died all of a sudden and no one was drawing attention to the chemical plants anymore, is when they started ordering us back to the plant.
And then it just kind of waned. You didn't hear any more about the chemical plants and how they affected the West End for a while.
So a lot of people see this as an us and a them. They say they're demonizing me. Industry says it about the residents, and the residents say it about the industry and the media. We've been demonized. We've been demonized. People come in ready to fight, and in activism, you have to be ready to fight for what you believe in, of course. But if you go in assuming that the other person is a bad guy and has bad intentions, that's very difficult to have a conversation. Well, with any issue that any community is facing, you have to deal with that adversarial thing that can shut down conversation. And at the same time, understand that anger is necessary to move things forward and get people to listen and say, whoa, this process isn't working for us, and we don't have all the information we want, and we have to change the way this is happening. But what's the balance of letting anger fuel you without letting you see the other person as a bad guy? I first met this Cane Run resident on a beautiful, almost cloudless afternoon, a typical day in this neighborhood.
Welcome to Cane Run Road.
We looked west, and about 100 yards away, just over the Pauper Cemetery, we saw it. One cloud looming in the sky. It was a continuous plume of fly ash billowing over the rickety Louisville gas and electric sludge processing plant, silhouetted by a mountain ridge of coal ash, 100 feet high and stretching for a mile. It wasn't always like this on Cane Run Road. When this resident first bought her modest home in 1979, the view from her porch was not a mountain of coal ash, but instead acres of farmland, apple orchards, and Indiana just across the Ohio River. But as the years passed, the plant expanded and became more and more of a nuisance. The soot that blew over covered their house and their car. It was annoying, but not really considered dangerous. Her perception changed in December of 2008. A breach in a coal ash pond in Kingston, Tennessee, resulted in 1.1 billion gallons of toxic sludge swarming 300 acres of the town, causing complete devastation. In response, the EPA identified other high-hazard coal ash ponds around the country, including this one, 50 yards from this resident's home.
bring trucks filled with drums out and dump them. They were filled to the brim, and we would go over and watch them. And I'm going to tell you the truth. Some of that goo was really sweet smelling. Toluene. Yeah, it smelled good.
Come on, Dennis, get out here. Bottles have gone up from 3 to 5 cents each. Get your butt out here, Dennis. Let's go. We gotta get to the dump before the others do.
It's not fair. How come you always get to ride the bike and I've got to pull the wagon? When do I get to ride the bike?
Oh, you're right. It's not fair. Let's find some wire in the heap by the tree and we'll tie the radio flyer to the bike so I can pull you.
Found it. Perfect.
I suffer the effects of that plague.
Boys, supper will be ready by 6 o'clock. I want you
B-cell,
both back home with me.
non-Hodgkin's lymphoma,
Mom,
radiation
Going to the dump to
therapy,
get bottles.
chemotherapy,
we got home by supper.
tonic-clonic
worry.
seizures with loss of consciousness, strange visual sensations, slowly spreading
I don't like
spots,
you boys playing in that
anxiety
filthy
minds,
dump.
as well as strange smells.
Careful you don't step on any broken glass.
Broken glass would be the least of our worries.
Don't worry, Mom. We'll be all right.
Get in the wagon,
Halitosis, nausea, fear.
Wonder if there's still any of that oozing goo.
I love how it smells, don't you? Yeah, and that color, that bright blue.
What do you think it's made out of?
Oh no. It's a mystery. But it's cool. Let's get to them and get those bottles before anybody else.
Yeah, we're gonna rack them up.
I'll tell you one thing, it was different from any place I ever lived. We called it Lee's Lane. We didn't call it Riverside Garden because anybody who went down there could see it didn't look like any Riverside Garden. I look back and I think, how did I ever do that?
We've been here since 2000. We didn't, believe it or not, we didn't know the chemical plants were there until about 2003. I wasn't a newspaper reader, and I thought maybe that was the issue and I missed it somehow. I really don't quite understand why I didn't know the chemical plants were there. I knew there was some kind of refinery at the edge of Chickasaw Park, but when we moved, I thought it had been torn down, and I thought maybe that was the issue. So back in 2003, I got involved in this work because one day I was cooking.
Honey, would you set the table, please? I'm leaving this pot on the simmer.
I went out to get the mail, and there was a flyer from an organization called React. And it had all these terrible things in it about, they're killing us, and there's so much pollution from these chemical plants. And I thought to myself, I thought they tore that thing down. So I went back to cooking. And then a second flyer showed up on another day, and I thought, this is interesting. I'm gonna have to go to one of these meetings. And then a third one showed up, and then I just told my husband, I'm not fixing dinner today. I'm gonna go to this meeting and see what they're talking about because this thing seems unreal. Because at that time, I was extremely naive in thinking that if these things were happening, the government would have stepped back to how has it affected me. At that time, I was really in panic mode because I'm thinking, okay, we just purchased this house a few years ago. We're living in some sort of wasteland. All these illnesses are connected. And what I had to do was just pray for peace because there was nothing I could do about it immediately. We were not going to sell the house immediately. So basically, I just prayed
my goodness, I do not want to do this. I don't like to be in front of the cameras. I have said from the beginning, I don't want to do this. I just like the research part. That is what I want to contribute to the event.
But you are young and full of energy, and the people want to see a new face giving our message.
So in the beginning, I was panicky, anxious. But as time has gone on, I found a sense of peace, but also a sense of urgency. They can coexist. So I feel like, well, if we hadn't moved here, I never would have known about this because I still wouldn't be reading the paper, right? But I feel like, while my naivete had to be sacrificed so I could work on this shit, but there's a lot of families out here that are being sacrificed because of the irresponsibility of government, of chemical plants, of greedy business people.
They asked me, what is home? What does home mean to me? And I've been thinking a lot about it. And I reckon home is where your heart is. Well, I guess it's a little bit of a cliche, huh? Not very original. But, you know, there's a lot of truth in that cliche. Home is where your heart is. It's where your family is. It's where your life happens. All your troubles, all your joys, all happen right there in your home. Now, my home is in Louisville, Kentucky, on Canaan Road, and I'm proud to live in Louisville. I just think we all deserve a healthy home, a clean home, and a safe home. And I reckon that's what I'm trying to do.
What is home? Me? I live on the dividing line between Smoketown and Old Louisville. I live there by choice, yeah. It's diverse. It's one of the few neighborhoods in the city that look like all of Louisville. There's Section 8 housing in the back, and there's been 4 more murders there in the past month, but I love Old Louisville. I can't live in the islands. It's too safe and white, and just doesn't feel like home to me. I love my backyard. Got a patio and a garden. And grapes that are actually transplanted from Italy. Tomatoes. A sage garden. It's a sacred herb for us Native Americans. And I've got, must be one of the biggest trees in Old Louisville. And I love it. Because it's right outside my back door.
There were a lot of community members, residents at tonight's meeting. There were some confrontations. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, I think the community being involved is crucial. But the environmental movement is full of people from all different walks of life, so we have clashes. Some of the new people are not scientists. Don't feel the need to burden themselves with scientific and historical accuracy. They perceive the world the way they do, and that's their reality. And then you have people like me, who see things with much more nuance and complexity. And when people get up and say things I think are incorrect, I feel like I have to set the record correct. Otherwise, it may appear to the audience that I believe what was just said. But I think that they understand and I'm working for the same thing they are.
And when you say they, are you referring to the residents?
I'm talking Black West End activists.
I saw things got a bit heated in there tonight.
You could say that. Many of us just recently found out about the toxins that have been poisoning us in our own neighborhoods. And yes, at times my anger has not come out ways I felt good about, like when I yelled at the mayor on camera, but, you know, I do not want to have to be doing this. I'm an activist because I have to be, because it affects me and my family and my community. I would rather just live my life. And it is not easy to be heard, so I have gotten a lot of times.
Why do you think it's hard for you to be heard?
Race plays a big role. I mean, you could go all the way back to when black people were captives, slaves in this country. We were demonized then, seen as less than, and that demonization is part of society now. I mean, you know, welfare queen or thugs or all of those little things they use to demonize people of color, black people in particular. And all around the country, you have these chemical facilities and things in places where blacks and Latino people live. So yes, there's definitely a racial connection.
Many people don't realize that much of that area was either empty or farms or white middle-class neighborhoods when Rubbertown came into existence. Folks need to know their history.
Well, there is the history of white flight from this area so that now Rubbertown is predominantly poor and black.
You know, I felt like some of these people needed to own victimhood. And when you own victimhood, it means that nobody else is the victim. And that's automatically defining the problem as wrong, because it is not just people in the West End who are having problems with air pollution. And I'm sorry, but epidemiology doesn't always match with what everybody thinks they know. And the epidemiology says that cigarette smoke, bad diet, and lack of exercise is what's killing most people. It is not Rubbertown pollution. That does not mean that we don't have to deal with Rubbertown pollution, but it does mean that if we fix all the Rubbertown pollution, and you still eat like crap, and you still don't exercise, and you still smoke like a chimney, you're not going to be well.
Of course, everyone knows that your lifestyle affects your health, but that does not subtract the effect that the chemical plants have. So there are different factors in your health. One of them could be your diet. One of them is obesity. One of them is smoking. But guess what? One of them is exposure to chemicals from those chemical plants. So I don't care if you're 200 pounds and you smoke 10 packs of cigarettes. If you live in an area that has chemical plants, that is also going to be a factor. I know I'm not a scientist, but my voice is still important. Every once in a while, when there's a hearing coming up or something, an issue about a chemical, I make sure I reach out to a couple of scientists around the country, and I make sure I ask, can you tell me, is this statement I'm about to make, is this a true statement or should I not make it? Because one of the things that I'm concerned about is making sure we don't get discredited. So I make sure I say, my understanding is, so that the chemical plants can come back and say, well, she said this, and that's a lie, instead of it being me just making a mistake. I say things like, look, this is what's going on. Are these the questions I need to ask? It's going to take scientists to help the communities.
What I want folks to understand is that if you present this problem of a disproportionate environmental impact on people in the West End or Rubbertown as having originated or been maintained because of racism, you're giving permission to racists to feel good about it. And you're giving permission to people who don't live there to not see themselves as having a dog in the fight.
Right. It's like, well, that sucks, but I'm not going to focus my energy there because it doesn't affect me. As opposed to, it affects everybody. Whether or not you are an ethical person who cares about what is happening in other neighborhoods, you should care, even if it is just for selfish reasons, because it is affecting everybody.
Right. And another reason is the prevailing direction of the wind is, from your perspective, from the southwest to the northeast. So it is just a real fallacy to present this as just a West End problem. It is a problem for all of us.
of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income.
With respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies.
It will be achieved
When everyone enjoys the same degree of
Protection
From environmental and health hazards.
and equal access
to the decision-making process
To have a healthy environment
in which to
live,
learn,
and work.
My master's is in management, not environmental engineering, okay? I used to be an insurance underwriter, and I wrote pollution liability, so I knew about chemical plants and their responsibilities under the law. Also, I lived in the West End for almost the first 40 years of my life. So when U of L got the environmental justice grant to educate the community members who'd raised the alarm about the problem in the first place were upset that they hadn't been consulted. They needed someone to mitigate this conflict. So an alderman approached me.
I'd like to see you be the one to handle this. You have a good way of talking to people. You're not afraid of pushback.
To do what exactly?
To help us navigate, mitigate, facilitate this process as the environmental justice director.
Okay, that sounds interesting. What's environmental justice?
You know, I'm not really sure how to do
Well, when they asked me in my interview, what I told them was, well, what I'm getting is that no one is supposed to be disproportionately exposed to emissions that affect their health more than anyone else. So I break that down to, I am no more exposed than you. We are all equally exposed together. Or not. I got the job.
People have been complaining for years. So 12 neighborhoods in West Louisville came together to develop an action plan.
We found the resources necessary to do the work. The university received a grant from the EPA for environmental justice through pollution prevention. We received even more money from our state and local governments. We could not have done it without the money flow.
and then we had air monitoring step by step to get the data.
And eventually, we had evidence that was overwhelming, inarguable, indisputable evidence.
We had a community that was paying attention and cared deeply. We had a very supportive mayor who, when the report was released, said, "We do have a problem. We're going to move forward."
You know, you don't just wave a magic wand and get a new law. That'd be nice. These elements. You know, you have to have your ducks in a row pretty good.
The APCD were the ones who officially gave the authority to initiate the STAR program. Something had to be done, and we had to do it by changing law and policy. We couldn't march or argue this point away. We had to change law and policy. And if we couldn't do that, all the screaming, all the hollering, all the marching means absolutely nothing. So at this meeting, where they would vote, you had your industry person who was huffing and puffing.
Well, it would cost us too much. And it isn't even real. Is it actual, these concerns?
And you have the one saying,
I just want to be sure we have our ducks in a row. We have got to get this right.
at that meeting where they would vote, some of the new activists, the REACT activists, wore gas masks. They could not speak to the Air Pollution Control Board, but they were back there with their signs. This group formed after all the analysis had been done, after we had found that there were 13 chemicals beyond safe limits. Still, the Reverend was the one that catapulted this into the media. He was very good at that, drawing attention to an issue. I was at every meeting that the APCD had, and I felt really insecure. Because of the arguments and disagreements they were having, I felt like this is not going to happen.
nationwide in terms of how it was created. It was created through the hard work and collaboration of residents, activists, government officials, industry, university, and scientists.
And its birth was not from local government, but from the people, from citizen concerns and efforts. When I was a kid, I didn't realize how much I had. We had almost 2 acres. We grew all our own vegetables and fruit. We had orchards and arbors. My mother raised chickens and ducks. The little ducklings were my favorite. We tried to beat the birds to the cherries. And all of this was right there at 36th and Grand, about a mile from the Rubbertown companies. And then 264 came through and destroyed a lot of that. Not just the construction, but the pollution from the cars and their leaded gasoline. What is home? It's complicated. I don't consider the West End my home anymore, even though I do feel at home when I am there. We've been in Prospect 30 years now. And I do feel a sense of community there. The James Taylor neighborhood where we moved is an African-American community. We wanted to stay in the West End. We looked all over the West End. But when we couldn't find what we were looking for, I just happened to go to Prospect, to the house of a church member. I was standing on a patio, looking out across the field, and I asked, is that house for sale over there? And it was. It had 1.5 acres, so many trees, a pond with turtles, the mallards, and the deer would come. It was a nature preserve almost. And I told my husband, I think I found the house. I think we're home.
The landfill houses are desolate. Yet eyes peer out, wondering why we're here. I wonder, as the foundations peeling away, layers of our pride flaking. I wonder if our parents even notice us kids slink off into the woods, only to find more trash, more flaking. Wouldn't you run away? All that trash piling up around you? Wouldn't you explore the newness as it came in by the truckload? Peel back the layers of sludge to find something new? And wouldn't you bring some of your treasure back to your head of flaking, add it to your pile of whatnots? Wouldn't it seem fitting to add to the flaking? Patch up the oozing wound with something shiny and new? Wouldn't you?
Did I like growing up there? No. I'm going to be honest with you. Some of them heavy metals and toxic chemicals made people aggressive. It was just boys from that community.
John, here's $1. Go to Millie's, get a gallon of milk. There's not enough milk to eat the box of ho-hos you brought from the dump yesterday. Your sister wants to go. Keep a good eye on her now. You know what I'm talking about.
Mom, why does she always have to go? Why can't Dennis go with me instead of her?
Your father's trying to sleep. He's got to work tonight to make the rice.
Don't worry, John. I'll go with you. You know those boys are always hanging around down at the store.
Dennis, you and Sis get in the wagon. I'll pull both of you, okay?
worry, Mom. We'll look after Sissy.
You didn't want to meet on the street. You didn't want to be bothered with because, I mean, they was just out of their minds. So you watched out for your sister and you watched out for yourself. Let me tell you what happened to Dennis one time.
Dennis, I'm worried about that guy Mike from down the street. Yeah, he's always mad for no reason. I don't know why, but he doesn't like me. I think he might try to start something.
Yeah, that guy is strange. Looks like a zombie. Don't worry, John. I got your back.
Johnny boy! Johnny boy!
Johnny boy!
Johnny boy!
Johnny boy!
Look out!
Come on, Mike! You just go on your way!
Get him!
Yeah, he stabbed him in the back with a screwdriver. I went and picked him up and brought him back to the house. And Mom pulled the screwdriver out. These people were affected mentally some way. I don't know how to explain it to you, but they weren't like normal people.
And so, I was awakened to the fact that this nuisance that had been bothering me for years had serious potential health impacts. I was determined to do something about it.
In 2010, this Cane Run resident received even more disturbing news. LG&E had applied for a permit to build an additional 60-acre, 14-story landfill. This one even closer to this resident's home. She went to a public meeting about the permit, prepared with questions.
I couldn't get any straight answers. It seems that their position was that their responsibility ends at the properties of their boundary. That the coal ash is like some unruly children that they couldn't be expected to control. They even refer to the soot that gets on my property as fugitive dust, as if it's the coal ash itself breaking some kind of law and not their own responsibility. My granddaughter, this is why I fight. I know what's in that coal ash. Granddaughter stays inside most days. And we can see River Valley Cemetery from our front window. It's a pauper cemetery, but even paupers have mourners. We watch them trying to pay their tributes in front of this industrial mess.
Dearly beloved, we are gathered here today on the banks of this river.
Even if it's quiet, it's still there.
Shall we gather at the river where bright angels' feet have trod?
You know, it's like it's another headstone. Yeah, some big grave.
So, all settled in?
Finally, it really feels like coming
Oh,
home.
I know what you mean. You know, we are the third generation of our family to live here.
Really? Well, it's beautiful. And so is the neighborhood, all these big green trees.
Yeah, and we have really nice, helpful, friendly neighbors too. I remember when one of our neighbors was ill and two men from other homes came into his yard work because he could no longer walk They did that without even being asked. It's a wonderful place to live.
Now, doesn't MSD have a wastewater treatment plant around here somewhere?
Yes, and we are smack dab in the middle of chemical corridor, which is something I don't like about living here.
Really? Has it caused you any problems?
The short answer is yes. Me and my whole family. My sister was recently diagnosed with Prevailing Winds. My younger sister. And she doesn't even drink. She was a runner, a vegetarian even. She baffled the doctors. They said she was perfectly healthy except for the tumor. We spent the whole month of March in Philadelphia with doctors. She was hospitalized in April. But she's positive, and I just pray for God's intervention. My brother just had a heart transplant. He lives about a block over from me. It wasn't until he moved to this area he was diagnosed with asthma. Now he's got congestive heart failure.
Well, did the chemicals cause all of that?
I still can't really tell you it is directly related to the chemicals, but what I do know is that chemicals coming from those plants do cause and aggravate cardiovascular issues.
Now, what about you? Have you had any problems?
I can't tell you for sure how it has affected my health, but I will say this. I struggled with infertility for years. And that's one of the things I think about. Well, you can't prove this or that, but what I do know is that a lot of those chemicals do affect the reproductive system.
I'm so sorry.
And then there's the asthma. Well, you start breathing in the chemicals, and then you start coughing, and then after about 3 months, you go to the doctor, and he prescribes you prednisone. It helps with the breathing, but I hate it because
It makes you fat! Ah. What on earth?
That's a shelter-in-place alarm. There's been some sort of incident at one of the plants. We could go again.
As I got older, I wanted to be involved in all cases of trying to fight against the injustice of this nation. Especially because I'm a Native American. You know, you can't have a healthy environment when an overwhelming half of the population is poorer than the other half of the population. So I see it all as one big environmental problem. And to me, in my opinion, capitalism is a big part of that problem. So I wake up every morning trying to figure out how to fight capitalism. I grew up 1.5 miles from the Cane Run generating station when I was a kid, so I thought it was kind of fitting when I returned there in 2010 to begin my work shutting that place down. I was just at another environmental justice conference. And there were only 4 people of color at the whole conference. And I just wasn't hearing the message, you know? I just wasn't hearing it. So I threw the brakes on the whole conference and I said, you know, I'm really happy that you all compost your poop. And that you have this wonderful world that you live in. But I just want to remind you that we live in 10 different Americas. I live in a place that, in my opinion, is under a terrorist attack from the power companies. A place where power companies can dump millions of gallons of coal ash-laden water into the Ohio River every day for 20 years, and when they get caught, they can just put their tie on and go back to work the next day. That's where I live. A place where nobody gives a damn. And they wish all of you would just die.
you know, from the time that the mayor proposed the STAR program in September of 2004 until it was approved in 2005, we at the APCD conducted over 60 public hearings with more than 1,300 citizens and responded to hundreds of questions from stakeholders.
Can you hear me? I'm not an activist. I'm just a regular mom. My kids go to Cameron Elementary. My daughter brought home this flyer about Wally the Wise Guy. I went to the website and saw the public service announcement.
So you're saying that we should just reduce our dependence on, like plastics and fossil fuels as individuals and as a household? Well, that's all well and good if you can afford one of those new hybrid cars and solar panels, but that's expensive.
I'll tell you this. I felt like I didn't belong to this world anymore. The world has changed, and I was off baking cookies. About the time I returned to the planet, we made the place so dangerous to live, we had to teach our kids how to protect themselves from these man-made dangers.
I take myself as an educated person. Yes, I'm below poverty level, but knowing that my life is at risk by the very air I breathe, or the air you breathe while at work is alarming, you try to reassure me that you're double and triple checking. How can you do that? Are you going out into the neighborhoods and educating the residents, not just the people who know about these meetings?
Why are you telling homeowners to put solar panels on their houses? Folks in Rubbertown can't afford that. Why don't you tell the factory owners to put solar panels on their factories?
Yes. Yes, and many of the factories, most of the factories, are making improvements towards less emissions, in investigating safer, cleaner ways of doing things, including things like solar panels. Now, the STAR program would help with that. You know, these industries have environmental engineers, and these folks are very passionate about finding more environmental ways of doing things, but it can't happen overnight.
So Wally the Wise Guy teaches us we should stay indoors should we hear the sirens from the chemical plants. Is it too much to say that I feel strange having to learn this new behavior?
And the children who live here, what do we call them? Are they destined never to end the cycle of poverty? To die of diseases we aren't even supposed to have? What will make this problem go away?
So you're saying that we should just use less plastics and just do things differently at home? Why do we have to do better? Why don't the industries do better?
And then there was this one meeting that was held in the Shawnee neighborhood. And there were a dozen of us or so up on the stage. The senator and the representative that had called the meeting, and me. And there was an audience of citizen stakeholders, 100 people or so.
I have waited here listening to speakers discussing issues of this or that.
And there was this one citizen who worked at Ford, who was a retired union leader. And he had kind of taken Rubbertown stuff under his wing as a cause since he had retired. And he was very articulate and thoughtful, forceful and rational, and an impressive man, handsome, maybe 6'3".
I understand that progress takes time, and that we are a society of instant gratification.
I kind of got to know him, and I liked him a lot. But he never liked me. He was always making faces when I responded, making faces like it. And I understood, because it was always the typical official government response.
The elderly couple who use this place as their final resting home, the single mom who moved in when this was the only place she could afford, or the family who passed the home through generations. We are a community. We are your mother, your brother, your sister, your father.
I want you to know that I hear your concerns, and that the government entities that are invested in this process are working to mitigate those concerns through education and outreach. And he gave me that same look, you know? That looked like you are just not saying what I need you to say. And then
Somebody, call 911!
And we were holding hands and saying prayers.
I don't want no trouble at the river. I don't want no trouble at the river.
For me to go to the other side.
When it's time for me to go to the other side.
And he died. Right there in a meeting on Rubbertown Missions. It was surreal. And I feel like if anything in all of that motivated me, I mean, if you're feeling like you're not sufficiently motivated, if you need something further to motivate you, everything else pales in comparison.
See, you have to get people to realize the impact, the suffering that people endure every day living next to these coal ash facilities, the worry that you feel, the stress that you're under, that you can't protect your child, and that's a horrible feeling.
You never met anyone like this Cane Run resident. She's a real dynamo, a spokesperson for her community. She speaks for them and they stand behind her. She's not really a natural when it comes to public speaking. She tends to be soft-spoken, keep her head down, focused on her notes, but when she gets going, when she's too angry to be nervous, her message is powerful.
Let me reassure you all here that the coal dust is perfectly safe.
thank you for doing this. You let them know the people's health is more important than their careers.
No, I do not think it would be appropriate for LG&E to provide medication to asthma sufferers. Thank you for going to Washington for those of us who can't go. Clean air is a basic right. Why, yes, if the opportunity presented itself, I would happily purchase property across from the plant.
We have to stop the pollution. We want to live.
These problems should have been taken care of decades ago. Louisville's living in the past.
Even though this man says he lives next to this facility, we should all be very afraid. These people are not good neighbors.
When it's hot outside,
When it's hot outside,
you can't take away my cool.
you can't take away my cool.
No, when it's hot outside,
When it's hot outside,
you can't take away my cool.
you
do you do when you can't protect each other? You go out and raise some hell. In 2011, we won. LG&E agreed to shut down this plant and replace it with a natural gas plant by 2016. You raise some hell and you make people listen. So that's what I do.
To whom it may concern the environmental protection. Though my correspondence has been extensive and I have a tendency to repeat, I have anxiety and excessive compulsive disorder that causes me to have unwanted thoughts, ideas, sensations, behaviors. This condition may help explain my many repetitious and unwanted emails you have received. Many current and past residents of the Lee's Lane community also have disabilities related to toxic waste exposure. The only common denominator between all of us is the Lee's Lane landfill, and many toxic chemicals and heavy metals brought there in trucks and crushed and buried by bulldozers, which pool on the surface and make their way down to the natural aquifers and groundwater, which provide the funny tasting water that everyone drinks. It would be a near impossibility not to have ill health effects. If I seem consumed and overly focused on the Lee's Lane landfill, it is because I firmly believe that it is responsible for my ill health effects and will ultimately result in my death. Sorry if I have offended anyone. What would you do if you were in my shoes?
So I've been thinking about this whole idea of assuming best intentions and not demonizing other people, but seeing them as individuals in relation to Rubbertown and other situations like that.
Why? And how? I mean, you just look at history and current events, and it is clear that not all people have the best of intentions. There are selfish people. There are cruel people. There are downright evil people. I mean, this methane plant in the California neighborhood, you think it's just a coincidence that it's being placed in a poor black neighborhood?
I hear that. And who am I to say to people that grow up in neighborhoods that I didn't grow up in and suffering oppressions that I didn't suffer, that they should just step back and not see industry as the bad guy, but as people, individuals who are mostly good at heart.
Trust has to be earned. And I'm glad to see that there are people working on earning that trust, but I understand people's need to remain vigilant. We have so many chemical plants in one place that even if each only has an incident once or twice a decade, that is multiplied by how many companies are there? And that adds up to a lot in the public's eyes. And these mistakes are much more high stakes. How do you expect people to blindly trust each other and just take what they do or say at face value?
Why is it that Louisville continues
lot of people like me nationally. I mean, young black folks doing environmental work. I wasn't seeing that. So I was like, I don't know if I can call myself that. We fight against environmental racism. That's what we do. For me, that means that neighborhoods of color are disproportionately exposed to environmental injustices.
This is what I'll tell you, my experience. Affluent people don't put up with no shit. You reset their mailbox when you're done working on their street, you're going to hear about it as soon as they get home. Or worse, their attorney's going to be calling you.
As someone who's done activism work, neighborhoods that aren't as organized, that don't have the history of activism, are less likely to call in a complaint.
Working people, they put up with an amazing amount of shit before they just barely begin to start speaking up. And if you think about it, affluent people are used to running their lives. People work for them. They issue the orders, it gets done. Working class people are used to taking orders.
One, they don't know who to call.
They're not used to having very much control over their own lives.
Two, they're sometimes nervous.
And so they take a lot of abuse before you even find out what's going on.
Three, they're like, if I call about that, and then when I want this done, are they going to get mad at me and not do it? No one wants to be a snitch, the person who told you. How do you make change?
I'm a happier person when nature's nearby. I don't really know if that's a just thing to say, but I really think that people have a more positive outlook on life when they're near nature. The more green space, the better. I don't find Prospect to be a cohesive community, and that's disturbing to me after 20 years. My community may exist, but if it does, it doesn't touch my life in particular. You ask me what is home? I don't think I can answer that.
Living in the Highlands, living as a green household, you know, we recycle everything. We compost. We have our own vegetable garden. The kids walk to school. We buy at the farmer's market. That is our lifestyle. But my neighbors in the Highlands have no idea what I do in town, except that they want to rush to judgment. They're so certain that they're right, and it's difficult. It's like, come on, let me show you what I do and what's going on. But because I'm representing Rubbertown, to them they're like, well, you're representing industry, and that is not what they're interested in. They're interested in telling me how it is. And they mean well. And they want to be champions of the environment, and they want to be all for environmental justice, and they want to be all for protecting the people they think need to be protected. But what is home? They're not there. Because they won't go west of 9th Street. They've never been west of 9th Street. Sometimes I feel like I have a split personality. Welcome to Cane Run Elementary School. You will be serving us here as the environmental coordinator.
I'm literally a stone's throw from DuPont, Dow, Optima, literally straight across the street. There is nothing going on environmentally for these children. There's nothing in this building for kids. I mean, this building is an environmental dream. This building is beautiful. It's solar, it's got solar lighting in all the interior rooms, you know, things that children need.
But
There's never been a playground on campus, and there's no park anywhere nearby. There's nothing outside for children. And the district says no funding.
why don't you start by bringing the outside into them? Bring our antler collection, our skull collection,
Well,
fossil collection.
it's a start. At least I'd be able to touch nature. But I have to do more. I have to do something. Look, I know you all have been around longer than me, and you probably know better than I do that in this particular school, the incidence of poverty is incredibly high. About 97% of the school's population lives below the poverty level. And you have to take some pretty major roads to get to Shively Park. Dangerous roads. It's not a place where children can just go. It's not a place where people can... Well, a lot of our families have several children. And you can't just take a whole bunch of little children, babies and toddlers with you and walk down these streets. Children cannot and should not live this way.
Well, I want to know a little more.
Our children come to our school because it's a safe place. But they are terrified to go outside. When I was growing up, I was outdoors every day, rain, shine, snow, and encouraged to be.
So where do the children play?
This double-wide dog kennel is where the children play.
That is not fair. All that's here for them is dirt to throw at each other.
What do you see us doing here?
I'm hoping for a partnership between people, organizations, the community, where everyone gets something out of it.
What can we do that would help the most?
Our children live primarily in a food desert. Most of our families do their shopping at mini marts and gas stations. Some of them will sometimes get on the bus and go all the way down the street to Walmart. Gardens are very important.
This garden is round. This garden is square.
This garden is in a barrel.
And it's handicap accessible.
Hey, my name's Darlene. I work down over at the school, and now I hope you'll come over and use our playground. It's open, you know, there aren't any signs, and oh, we have a peace garden, perfect for our neighborhood. Please, come to our open house. I'm retired now. And at any point in the day, 7 days a week, right up until after dark, you can come to the corner of Cane Run Road and Ralph Avenue and see families. All ages, young and old, enjoying this playground. and it's open. There are no signs saying don't do this and don't do that. I'm not really into signs. I couldn't believe it when the district was like, well, you're gonna have to put up cameras, you're gonna have to put up fences, you're gonna have to put up signs, you're gonna have to have police, and I was like, what are you talking about? All you're doing when you do that kind of thing is raising red flags. I don't like keep out signs.
Hi ho, it's off to work I go. Do 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 do. Hi ho, hi ho. I graduated college in 1991 in the middle of a recession, and you get the job that they're going to give you. Now I graduated with a degree in geography and technical writing, with a minor in urban and public administration, and I thought with a degree like that, I was going to get a job in parks and recreation. And when I graduated, that job did not exist. And you've got to get a job. So I went to this steel drum processing facility here in town. And it's funny because they've got this vacancy and I am this young punk that needs a job. And we basically mutually BS'd each other into me getting the position. He's like, who would want to work in a steel drum plant?
It's the coolest job ever. It's fabulous here.
And I'm like, I know all about that. And I start dropping buzzwords and lingo and acronyms, and he doesn't know that I don't know a whole lot more about it than he does, and I got the job. I was doing the environmental permitting, hazardous material, emissions, that kind of thing. And I remember this very distinctly. I was sitting there one day doing a mundane, routine, everyday task. I was using a typewriter. I was typing out a hazardous waste manifest to ship to its destination facility. And I remember this very vividly. It was the middle of the afternoon. I'd done a couple dozen things already. And I'm typing. And all of a sudden the clouds parted. And I had this
Eureka!
moment. And it was like the angels sang. And I went, oh, crap.
I'm responsible for this, and I'm responsible for that, and I'm responsible for this too, and I really don't know a lot about any of this.
And I had this moment. And I realized I had two choices. I could run as far and as fast as I could.
Or I could actually learn about what it is I'm supposed to know about. And I said,
I think I'm going to give that one a try. Hi ho, it's off to work we go.
part of my job now that I'm working in Rubbertown, emergency planning, preparedness, and response. An emergency plan. We're doing this to prevent accidents from happening. We're pre-thinking all the risks and what could go wrong and what are we doing to prevent that. The preparedness element is, in case something were to go wrong, will we have the supplies and resources and whatever we're going to need to address it? If this happens, will we have this on site and ready to roll? And then the response element is, oh my God, this happened, so let's roll. Let's minimize the damage, get it taken care of. And I'm glad there are people like me out there. Sometimes I say, wow, I'm one of those people. I have to bring my A game. This is why I've spent 23 years trying to figure out how best to do my job.
I like doing what I do. I am very proud of my work. When I was a child,
People forget how bad the air was in the 1950s and 1960s.
This place was putting out white dust everywhere, out of these stacks.
Leaving a trace of dust and destruction.
The soot from Rubbertown manifested itself.
This was terrible. I had to wash my windows twice a week. You had to.
We had a dish bureau, and every day, Mother could wipe her hand across that and get soot.
And the smell.
Sunflower, thistle, honeysuckle.
Flowers bud and bloom, opening like mother's hands, comforting your soul.
I grew up with the smell.
People were getting really upset about this.
When despair for the world grows in me,
My fear grows, tearing seeds of life.
There's nothing you can do when pain runs through every nerve and cell.
in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be.
Such a sound of home for me.
They wrote letters to the city, mothers and fathers.
They tried going to doctors, to the health department.
To the Air Pollution Control District.
To Frankfurt.
I found a connection.
The peace of wild things.
The industry's attorneys would say.
You know, this is no different than chalk dust in the classroom.
Some deny it, which of course wasn't true.
Lives scraped to the bone. Festered edges, fresh graves.
I wake in the night at the least sound in fear of what my life and my children's lives may be.
But you can tell it's gotten better.
It's gotten better here.
It's gotten better here. There's no pollution now compared to the way it was in the war years and the post-war years.
The Federal Clean Air Act of 1970 put an end to a lot of that.
And STAR.
And the West Jefferson County Community Task Force.
And the Rubbertown Community Advisory Council.
REACT.
And the new natural gas-powered LG&E plant.
They put a stop to chemicals coming into the air like they used to.
From what I can surmise, the companies aren't going anywhere.
The water flows beyond my dreams and around bends and meanders its way past Louisville and on to meet the Ohio.
It travels on and on.
Places I'll never know. But
Today, it is mine.
Now what you gonna do?
Now what you gonna do
When they clean up Rubbertown?
when they clean up Rubbertown?
Gonna throw up my arms.
Gonna throw up my arms
Shake 'em all around.
and shake them all around. And I keep on singing till they lay me in the ground. And I keep on moving till I get where I'm bound.
I come into the peace of wild things who do not tax their lives with forethought of grief.
So if we have to live together,
I come into the presence of still water, and I feel above me the day-blind stars waiting with their light.
we might as